the rest of the meeting we don't have to.
All steady.
I'm kidding. Families, you have homework to do, siblings to take care of. Thank you very much for coming, Harborview. We appreciate you very much. Oh, there goes the student body. Nobody to boss us around and tell us what to do. Calling the meeting back to order after our time certain. I'm going to go to H, minutes, H1. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Point of order, we've already covered that.
I don't think we voted.
So we did.
We did vote. Oh, thank you. Well, good. I thought I had been errors and omissions. We're going to item J, public comments. At this time, members of the public may address the Board of Trustees regarding a matter of public interest not appearing on the agenda, but within the subject matter jurisdiction of the governing board per Education Code 35145.5 and Government Code 54954.3. No action may be taken on comments of off-agenda items unless specifically authorized by law. In order to address the Board of Trustees, a speaker may indicate his or her wish to speak or may submit a public comments card to the Board of Trustees recording secretary prior to the start of the open session. Speakers wishing to address the Board of Trustees after the first public comment section of the agenda will have the opportunity to do so during any other public comments to the Board of Trustees later in the meeting. If the speaker wishes to address the Board of Trustees on an item on the agenda, time will be provided at the commencement of that item. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person. Per Board Bylaw 9323, the speaker will address the president, that would be me, from the podium over there when speaking to the Board of Trustees. Are there any public comments?
There are none this evening.
After all that, not a single one? Item K, communications. K1, written communication to the board. Superintendent Hanson.
We have none.
Item K2, board committee reports. K2A, Huntington Beach Community Services Commission, HBCSC update. Stephanie Green, district representative to HBCSC.
I guess that's me. Why do I always have to go after talented, cute, wonderful kids? I mean, come on. It's not fair. Next time I want to go before them. My name is Stephanie Green. Good evening, President Briscoe, Board of Trustees, and OVSD staff. In serving on the Parks Commission, what I'm coming to find out is apparently they don't meet in November or December. December is a Christmas party. So I haven't had a whole lot to report, but we did meet again in January. But there's been a bunch of staff changes, and so it's going a little slower than I would like, but we're working on it. I was appointed to the Huntington Central Park Subcommittee. There seems to be a lot of energy and support for improvement of Central Park, and after hearing all the comments from all of you the last time I was here, I figured I would concentrate on one that had kind of a lot of attention, and that lake in Central Park has a lot of attention right now. So I thought, oh yeah, I'll do that. I raised my hand. I want to do that so that maybe I can piggyback on the Central Park Lake to get something done at the other parks. Recently, Brian Ragland of Public Works gave an update on the groundwater conditions in Central Park. There is an effort to determine if the groundwater is seeping into that Talbert Lake. They built a temporary berm at the lake, so it's divided into north and south sides. At this time, the Public Works believes the groundwater is truly seeping into the lake. The next step is to meet with the Orange County Water District to determine the next steps. I've asked to be included in this meeting. Hopefully I can piggyback on that and get some other questions asked and answered as well. I will be following up with Brian to get a clearer picture about why, I think I know, but why it really matters that groundwater is seeping into the lakes. But I would like to bring you facts, not my opinion. So I'll get back to you on that. There is a discussion that there is a need to make our lakes more appealing, which is great news for all of us that think that the waters in our lakes are really bad. So on the agenda for the next meeting is a discussion of getting a committee together to actually look at that. and I'll be raising my hand for that one too. So hopefully I can get some answers to you about the water in the lakes at our parks. There was a discussion also about partnering with the Secret Garden. They're looking during Earth Week, sorry. They're looking to do a little fundraising, get some trees planted, etc. They asked, I believe they met with PTA, and they were open to it, but I just wanted to bring it back to all of you that they were going to try maybe work with the student councils and see if they could do a little fundraising for the trees there in Central Park. So I don't know if it's allowed, not allowed, but if it is, I just want to make you guys open to it, and I think it would be great for the kids to be able to participate in kind of rebuilding their parks. Speaking of which, Oakview Park received a Kaboom grant. Huntington Beach applied and received a grant to install new play equipment at the Oakview Park. I attended a collaboration meeting with the community at Oakview Community to determine which equipment was most wanted and most needed. I just have to say, what a great community. I mean, short notice, tons of parents there, tons of kids there. Everybody's participating. It was such a great evening, and it was so fun to participate in such an event. The build will be happening on February 27th, 28th, and possibly the 29th, if anybody would like to come out and volunteer. Yes, the park will be built in 3 days. Okay. Yokohama Tires is bringing in volunteers. They're busing in their employees for those days to help build the park as their charity give back. I'm hoping it doesn't rain, but they say they should be able to knock it out in 2 days, which I just think is fantastic, start to finish. Also, the youth sports grants for this year for 2018-19 has been delayed. They say they need to do a criteria review, and it was also mentioned during the meeting that we needed to have the joint lease agreement signed. But it's my understanding that the joint lease agreement with OVSD is sitting on the city attorney's desk, is what I've kind of been able to gather. I did start pushing this issue with Chris Slama, who is now heading up that department, at least temporarily. And he got back to me as of 5 o'clock tonight. Chris Slama has said the final copy, hopefully tomorrow for signatures, would allow it to get on the city council agenda for February 19th. So hopefully, maybe we will finally get this joint agreement signed. And I think that's kind of it. If you have any questions for me?
Trustee Clayton-Tarvin?
I appreciate your proactive stance on getting onto the subcommittee for the park and being able to talk about the water in the lake. It is in fact the county, the Orange County Healthcare Agency, that would do testing if any testing is going to be done. So when Trustee Briscoe and I believe Trustee Westwell at one point queried the city about that, they sort of kicked it to the county and said, well, the county does that sort of thing. That, they even told me that specifically, so I can speak for myself. So with them there, is it going to be the healthcare agency there, or who do you know who's going to be there?
I just have down in my notes that OC Water District.
Oh, the okay, that's different. So the water district will be there, but maybe they have some oversight in that as well.
Yeah, I can circle back. I'd be happy to circle back with them and find out whether we can get OC Health Department in there as well.
Yeah.
I think I can make a case for that.
Okay, so it's the Orange County Healthcare Agency.
Healthcare Agency.
Yes,
okay.
OCHCA.
Okay, I will. And I know that there were 2 professors from Cal State Long Beach also attending, and they will be doing some projects with the lake water, but they didn't really tell us what exactly they're going to be doing yet. So, not sure if that's good or bad.
Any other questions? I would like to recognize Trustee Westwell raising the issue of those lakes. Those lakes are filled with feces, urine runoff, pesticides, chemicals, waters, oil, and all sorts of other things off the streets and the yards of all the nearby proximate homes. And stock those lakes with fish, and we expect our children to fish out of there and eat those fish. Maybe that's okay, but it's certainly worth asking the question.
I totally agree, and I appreciate the direction from all of you, because it definitely steered me towards what I would raise my hand to.
I have a series of questions. I think I know the answers to these, but I want to draw your attention to questions I have. The grass condition of the parks is abominable. The Greer Park, I believe is the name, up by where I live, McFadden and Golden West, has giant, big mud dead spots. Staff at the city of Huntington Beach always blames it on ducky doo-doo. And I think if that's a bunch of ducky doo-doo, I think it's a bigger problem of maintenance, interest, care, the conditions of our parks. Is there anything talking about the park conditions, the dead grass, the dead mud spots?
Not at all of the surrounding parks, unfortunately. I did learn that we only spend $50,000 a year maintaining our playground equipment for the 437 pieces of playground equipment that we have. It's a $50,000 budget. I had to raise my hand and say, wait, per park, per unit? No, $50,000 per playground, for the entire 437 of them. So that's kind of been on the agenda more so than the grounds around it.
And the next question I had, not giving you direction, but the question is in the Greer Park specifically, I had to look at the others, the tables were removed. This nice picnic tables, just ground off, chopped off, and removed. There used to be 3, now there's 1. Did they talk anything about replacing or why they remove equipment, like things that people could actually use to sit on while they use the park to have a picnic?
So I've been told that the removal of any equipment is due to safety reasons. So they were either breaking or etc. And then I was also told that the city is trying to bring to the budget ways to replace this equipment. That's where that $50,000 kind of came in. It's like, how do we replace the things? Can we replace swings for that?
I'll use some big fancy words on normal entities that produce something people actually want to buy.
Yeah.
Unlike cities, have a thing called an accrual and a sinking fund. And if they know the stuff's going to last for 20 years, they accrue the money every year a little bit at a time and then have money at the end to replace it. It's an amazing process.
Right.
Does the city do anything like that?
No, I asked that same exact question. No, they do not.
We have undeveloped land, specifically Irby Park, a giant piece of land. We have other undeveloped land. We have a shortage of flat land, level rectangular playing fields for our youth. What's going on with Irby and the other undeveloped parcels?
We did not get an update this last.
Can we ask?
Absolutely, I sure will.
And then I have a personal interest in tall leafy green canopy, tall tree canopy, where we have trees that are 5 stories tall and provide beautiful shade in the summer and are deciduous and provide a lovely tree structure in the winter. Do we have anything looking like that in the city, an interest in tall trees?
So the Secret Garden and the Central Park Committee, I believe, really has kind of an interest, and I believe that they might be able to pave the way to have it happen at more parks. Is it happening at any other parks? It's not even
We have little lollipop trees that grow 10 feet tall and don't do much of anything, in my opinion. And 5 is the field allocations. Did they say anything about taking back their duty and responsibility to provide something in the way of recreational park services for our children by doing field allocations across all the school sites and public parks?
I did discuss that a little bit at the last meeting. Chris Slama didn't seem to have the information he needed to discuss it with me, and I asked to have it put on the next month's agenda.
Well, you're the best. They used to allocate supposedly 1/2 of one person's position full-time to do that, which is a bogus number, but it does take time and effort by the staff, and the city needs to allocate the public parks and the school parks, and anyway. So that's good. Thank you for doing
it came up with the youth sports grants because we talked about the fact that it's a lot of that money should be going back into the infrastructure of these fields and etc. And how is it that that's happening?
You did mention the field allocation question though.
Yes.
That's great because it hasn't come up much. Okay, then the last is the dollars. They said Huntington City used to give money to the various sports because we have no real youth athletic sport team or staff or anything to support our kids. Did they say anything about that?
They umbrella that under the youth sports grant, which they delayed for 2018 and 19. I asked, does that mean we get to give out twice as much next
good.
year? And I got a firm no.
What did other school districts bring up that we should learn from or know about? Were you the pushiest, most nosiest individual there?
Well, probably. I try and participate. I try and make sure I'm asking questions and asking questions that I think would be important to all of you.
Did any other districts or anybody bring anything up?
No.
Thank you. Thank you for your great work.
Thank you.
Yes, Trustee Westwell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think I can answer your question with Irby Park. That has recently been developed. I believe that they wanted to keep that as open space and natural, and they've installed a wood rail fence on the perimeter, and they've also put in a walking trail throughout Irby Park. And I believe that's how they plan on leaving it, but I could be wrong. One point I did want to make, it's been a while since I've been to a CSC meeting. I have noticed, and maybe it's changed since I noticed it, but it seems to be a diminishing supply of trash cans around Central Park. And if you go there on the weekend, the trash is always overflowing. And it's a safety concern, and it's a health hazard, and it just looks ugly. And we should have, in my opinion, enough trash cans so they can hold the trash for a weekend, or else pick up more of it. That's something you may want to bring up to them.
Definitely.
Maybe
Thank
you
you.
don't. Thank you.
Yeah, certainly will. Thank you.
Any other questions from trustees? This is a very productive presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow. Okay, we're going to go on to K3, Trustees Communications. I'll start to my immediate right, Trustee Souders.
Oh. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending once again. I look forward to hearing from our various organizations and some of the reports that are coming up. I have been a little under the weather, so I'm going to keep this really short and just say thank you. And how about those kids? That is a phenomenal presentation. Thank you for inviting them, President Briscoe. I always get a kick out of seeing the kids, and they always kind of warm my heart a little bit and make, in my mind, make the meeting a little bit better. But I will end with that and say thank you to the audience for attending once again.
Trustee Westwell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have no comments at this time.
Trustee Singer.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I also want to commend Harborview, the staff, the teachers, the students. It was a great presentation, and it's exciting to see how they are taking care of the students as a whole. We're not only teaching them to read and write and memorize things, we're teaching them to connect, to have that social and emotional connection, and I think that's critical. So when people out there say, you know, we're not taking care of the students as a whole, yes we are. Come to our schools and see what's happening. That's a perfect example of what's happening in all of our schools in Ocean View School District. Teachers are taking the time to connect with those students. Relationships matter. That's the theme of the year, and we continue to show that we are doing it. I was very happy to see these kids, and I know those are memories that they will remember. And yes, again, it is critical that we give rigorous programs, that we teach them, that we push them. But those connections that they're making there, those are critical too. So I was very happy and pleased. So thank you for having them come over and show us what they're doing in their classrooms.
Trustee Clayton Tarvin.
Thank you, President Briscoe. I have actually quite a bit, a list of things that I wanted to let you all know about, reports that, on things that I've done in the past couple weeks. But before I do that, I just want to say that we're here for the kids, and tonight they did a great presentation. I was so impressed with all they were doing. And the children in our school district are what we should be focusing on. And, you know, our students are sensitive, they are caring, and, you know, they're innocent. And what's unfortunate is that I'm going to now have to report out something to you that I'm glad the kids are not in the room for. This is not a violation of the Brown Act, although something happened in closed session tonight that I'm going to report to you, because I think it's of dire consequence. We were discussing something that wasn't going to be have an action on. We were talking about parliamentary procedure and raising your hand, and I made a point of order to get President Briscoe to be able to rule on how we should ask to be recognized. And Trustee Westwell said, I will not raise my hand because of my condition, and he said if I do raise my hand, I'll have to use my middle finger at you. And then we proceeded to have an exchange.
Pathological liar.
And then, excuse me, point of order.
Out of order.
And I reclaim my time, reclaiming my time. And he also sexually harassed me and blew kisses at me. He harassed me sexually and blew kisses at me, and everybody in the closed session saw it. He is a sexual, well, let's put it this way, harasser. And I will not stand for it. And President Briscoe, it's your responsibility to protect me as the speaker that I was, and not allow somebody to sexually harass me in a public institution. And I would like for you on the record, President Briscoe, to validate what I have said, which is that you saw what he did, heard what he did, that we all heard it, and that I am disgusted.
You have 40 seconds left.
Okay.
But after that, there's...
Well, the bottom line is this is not behavior fitting of a elected honorable trustee at all. Flipping off people, threatening to flip off the public, blowing kisses at a female colleague. One time he told me I should get my panties out of a twist as well. I'd say it's getting out of control. So I don't appreciate it, and I want it to stop. That is the public warning that I'm going to give, and I expect to be protected by the chair. Thank you.
I will do my best. Well, you've had your time to speak.
Point of order, personal preference. My name was specifically mentioned. I'd like to respond to that, Mr. President.
No time or place on the agenda to respond, Trustee Westphal. So it's my turn to speak. I want to draw the attention of the audience to several things of a less dire nature. One, we've added an important word to our district blueprint. Is that what we're calling it? It's one word, but it means a lot because most of I know the districts have it there that I know of. It says achieve. The first word for our job and our district and our role as elected trustees, as staff, as instructional staff, teachers, support staff, everybody, administration, is to help our students achieve. That's huge. That's achieve in all its many forms, in all its many ways. I want to draw your attention to that. I also want to remind everybody here that we are volunteers up here. We don't get paid for this job. I've volunteered in this role now for over 12 years, and I'm in for another 4. We're volunteers, and I do this for the kids, the students. This was fantastic what we saw tonight. I attended the Vista View mural reveal. Is it Mr. Howard? What's the name of the adult that's helped draw several hundred of those?
I'm sorry, I don't have the name with me.
Michael. He was there, and the students who painted the mural were actually there. There were 16 of them, and we revealed, opened it up, had a great picture. It was really an honor to be there at Vista View, and the mural's great on the side of the portable classroom wall. I attended the PTA, PTSO, and so on and so forth, President's Roundtable. We had a lively discussion, I think you would agree, about our areas and our plural use. I learned quite a bit, and I think we'll hear more about that tonight. The children in our district have the best education, and we have the best kids in the district compared to other districts and on our own merits. This example of Blake with his yoga, and Joe Gaglione made me go to a yoga, my first and only yoga session, and I thought you just sort of like, I was sweating. After 1 hour, I was pouring off with sweat, just holding poses, and it wasn't even hot yoga, it was just regular yoga. So when Blake says he yoga in his room for 2 hours, and oh yeah, he sweat, I can imagine. This is wonderful programming. They will take it for the rest of their lives with them. The things that we have to offer our students are huge. I want to draw everybody's attention to our environmental program at Golden View. It's no longer Farm View. We have a real program, real curriculum, a 4-H club. We're doing big things related to the environment and our standards in teaching at Golden View School. And it's just one of our many programs. That concludes my comments. We'll go on to item...
Point of order, Mr. President.
Yes, Trustee Westphal.
I witnessed a Brown Act violation just a few moments ago, spoken by Trustee Tarvin. How are you planning on handling this?
The Brown Act covers litigation, personnel matters, and contract negotiations, and I didn't hear anything in her talk about any of those three items. Brown, closed session meetings that cover other things, those are not protected, and those can be discussed in the open. So I didn't hear anything that was a Brown Act violation, and if you were determined to ascertain if your view is in fact correct, you would need to file a formal complaint with the state of California and have them investigate, and then the solution to a Brown Act violation is to redo the event, and there's no Brown Act violation that I can discern. Thank you, Trustee Westphal. So we're going to go on to K4, Superintendent's Communication. Dr. Hanson. Oh, I'm sorry. Were you? No, okay, yeah, I heard Patricia, and I thought I missed somebody again. Dr. Hanson, Superintendent's Communication, please.
Thank you so much. I have had a busy last few weeks, and my visits to schools continue. During the last few weeks, I visited Circle, Golden, Mesa, Westmont. I also attended kindergarten night and had a huge showing of new families and returning families to come learn about our kindergarten program and our TK program. And I want to also give a shout out to our middle school principals and Kathy Tryon and Julianne Hofer, who put on our middle school information night. And those transitions are so important, and we're glad that we offer programs where parents can learn about those important transitions and all the information that they need and meet the important people that they want to make those connections with. I also just want to share my appreciation for the involvement of our parents and our community leaders, like Stephanie here tonight, and also we're going to hear from Leslie, our PTO roundtable. This last couple of weeks, I did attend the PTA roundtable, and we are having such a good showing of families, parents rather, coming out for those events, and they actually helped us plead our case to the Orange County Board of Education, we have a charter school, Sycamore Charter School, that is appealing our board's decision to the Orange County Board, and we want to urge the Orange County Board to not overturn our decision, because our board here in Ocean View believes we have strong programs and that we should support local control. And I want to commend our board members for urging our PTO presidents to come out in force at the Orange County Board meeting. And it's real community activism like that that keeps our school district strong. And another parent event, or event where there were community and parents there, was our Citizens Oversight Committee. And we had a strong showing of people and good presentations that took place, and even a person, one of our auditors in attendance, commented that he attends many of these type of meetings up and down the state, and he rarely sees the participation that he sees at our district. I thought that was a really nice compliment, considering, you know, we're just a medium-sized district, and he goes to these all over, and to see our construction team was there, our district's team was there, our finance people were there, and all kinds of parents. And I commend Dr. Conroy and his executive assistant, Cindy Pulfer, for helping to put all those meetings together, because they matter. So my message is that community involvement matters, and we appreciate all of you that are doing spending those extra evenings when you could be at home, you know, watching Netflix or something, but you're here doing the good work on behalf of Ocean View, so thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hanson. K5, PTA, PTO, PTSA, PTSO, President's Round Table.
Okay, that's pretty good. Thank you. Good evening, President Briscoe, Board of Trustees, Superintendent Hanson, and cabinet members. My name is Leslie Sheridan, and I'm here to report on the President's Roundtable that was held on Monday, February 4th. I'd like to thank President Briscoe and Trustee Singer for attending, Superintendent Hanson, Dr. Conroy, and Julie Jennings and Jody Johnston were there as well. I want to make sure I got those names correctly. So we appreciate all of you coming and your time and input into those meetings. It was a great discussion meeting that we had. One of the things that was shared with us was our blueprint, right? We participated in the blueprinting committee, and it was fun to see this all come together, where achievement and relationships matter. And this is a wonderful piece of work, and we hope to share this with all of our community, highlighting all of the wonderful things that are happening: our environmental science, our science, technology, art, engineering, mathematics, the Visual and Performing Arts Academy at the schools, the GATE programs, working with the special needs children. I just can't say enough how much I truly believe that there is a place for all students in this district, and I appreciate everybody's efforts to make sure that this is that place, right? And that you allow all of us to participate in that. Super fun to see that the middle schools are actually coming out with theirs. So my kids are at Springview, and so I want you to know that Springview's is coming. We're working on that as well. We are the leadership school, so we're working on that and making our identity known, because we don't have singing and dancing, but we are the leadership school. So we want to make sure that the world knows that as well. All right, so the main discussions that we had at the meeting were about the Sycamore Creek Community Charter School and their appeal that was submitted to the Orange County Board of Education. And again, it was recognized that if we want the Board of Education to know our feelings and how we feel about it, we need to be there and make sure that we get our cards in and that we stand at the podium and let everybody know. At that February 13th meeting that they'll be holding, and that is a 9 o'clock time to start. It's changed a little bit. It was 10 and it got changed a little bit. So we want to make sure that everybody knows that and that they participate in that. At the meeting, we did review the Aries communication. And it's funny, we have phone calls that go out, text messages that go out, emails, we have flyers, and how do we still hear people say, I didn't know that was going on? So we have communications going out on how to actually go in and activate the Aries system and how we can check up on our kids and see how they're doing on a daily basis or a weekly basis, hourly if we want to go in and check and see. So we went over this system, and it was interactive. Everybody got their phones out. We were looking at the app. We were looking at the website, the school district's website, and how we get to that communication, as well as the difference between the online experience when we're sitting at our computer and how the app works. And we came up with some stuff. We showed, Jody, hey, we don't know what to do here. She took notes and was actually helping a parent work out the complication on the phone right there. So it was interactive and a great information session, and I think that we'll see some improvement there in the system, especially our understanding of it, right? But it was also addressed that, as we look at the system and we're checking up on our kids and we pick them up and we say, how was school, right? That maybe that's just not the only thing that we should be saying. It's about how was your homework, and did you turn your homework in? How was your classwork, and did you turn your classwork in? And maybe did you make sure your name was on it? And then, right? And how's your reading? Are we up to date with our reading? So it was a fun discussion on how we should be interacting with our kids, not only with the systems that are in place, but our face-to-face interactions. There's also discussion about the modernization and the fencing. And as we go into this complicated time of modernization and the here and now problems that are happening at the school, there was discussions on systems that might be failing, like our heating and our air conditioning, and what things are we going to do to help address those things right now. And Dr. Conroy, we appreciate you just hearing all of that and, being so polite when everybody had a lot to say. And we just want you to know that we recognize that there is a difference between the modernization of the whole district and then the here and now when the heating and the cooling is not working. And we just shared some of the things that we knew about the schools and maybe the special needs at certain schools. So that was a big discussion. And lastly, there was a discussion about the transition meetings that we have. I know I'm over time, but the transition meetings that we have kids going from home to kindergarten, from elementary to middle school, and then what about those middle schoolers that are going to high school? And a couple of years ago, we had a big discussion and a movement towards, let's have a meeting helping those kids move from middle school to high school. And we recognize that not all the high schools are coming to those meetings. And so it becomes a difficult thing to how do we let them know that really what we're doing is giving them information on when they're supposed to sign up and what school of future freshman nights they're supposed to go to. So it is unanimous discussion that possibly that night we don't need to host.
One more minute, please. That
maybe we just address it with emails, flyers, communication, that they need to go to the schools and they need to know that, by the end of March, you better pick your high school. So I just wanted to share that with you. Thank you for your time and your support. Is there any questions? Thank you very much.
No questions.
Okay, thank you very much.
It was a very good meeting. So that's the PTA, PTO, PTSA, PTSO report. Case 6, Employee Associations Communications, beginning with CSCA and ending with OVTA, please. Well, Stephanie, are you leaving? The best part's coming.
The best part's coming, promise?
Building me up there.
That's true.
Good evening, my name is Jason Bozarth and I am the chapter president for CSCA number 375. And I would like to thank everyone for giving us this chance to speak. Unless one was born under a rock, you know about the hearing that is coming up, and I assure you, we were not born under rocks. Tree roots, maybe. Especially those of grounds. All of us here, among the classified staff of this school district, are greatly concerned by the tactics and actions of Sycamore Creek Charter School. Our e-board, as well as many drivers from transportation, will be in attendance to make our voices heard. As to whether or not they will listen remains yet to be seen. Although if there is one takeaway from the current political climate, it would be a word to political officers such as Trustee Barkey, who have been elevated to power by the disregard of the electorate at large. A politician ignores the will of the working poor at their peril. Now I'd like to move on to lighter subjects. Myself and the other members of our e-board were installed and sworn in several weeks ago during our officers' luncheon, after hearing from our union president, Ben Valdepena. We also heard from several motivational speakers who spoke a great deal about the importance of developing personal relationships. Gee, I wonder where I've heard that before. They offered their words of wisdom, which amounted to, and please forgive my paraphrase, the world shall work against the good that you try to do, but still you should do it anyways. A message which I very much tried to take to heart. We also had our first chapter meeting of the new year, which was jam-packed, and we've had to hit the ground running. I have made it a priority to begin site visits this month, but that may get delayed until after the Sycamore matter is decided. We shall see. We had a packed Know Your Rights seminar for our members that educated them in the full rights that are granted to them via membership in our organization. Ignorance of their rights and privileges is one sad truth about the classified staff that has been a near constant in my time here. That is why our excellent turnout for the seminar was a very good sign. Education is really what we are all about, and so why should we stop with just our students? At least that is my humble opinion. One of our number was also recently elevated to the CSEA State Level Merit System Committee as our regional representative on that body. We are all very proud of his work in that capacity, while still representing our chapter as an e-board member. Ocean View is a merit system district, and it has been a long journey building our relationship with the Personnel Commission along the POW model. But in all honesty, all of this work has already borne fruit in allowing us greater communication and a considerable degree of self-determination when it comes to our interactions with the Personnel Commission. This concludes my updates for the evening. I hope that everyone enjoys the upcoming President's Day holidays. And for those of us who were here last year, this time, no Gettysburg Address, I promise. Thank you very much and have a good night.
Before you sit down, are there any questions from the board? There is, from me.
Throw me a curveball, huh?
You mentioned rights, and that certainly is important to know, but you also used the term rights and privileges. So my questions, I have three. In terms of privileges, do you have anything that helps your members with their continuing education requirements for classes they have to have for some kind of licensing that they might have, like fire sprinkler licensing and things like that?
If I may, you had asked me that at the last meeting, and I had given you the answer in terms of we work closely with the Personnel Commission because the Personnel Commission, because of the wide array of certifications that are required for our different positions in classified, they're the ones who really keep track of what is required. Therefore, we work with them, as we are a merit system district, to essentially aid our employees in advancement of their career by forming different classifications and step process.
The Janus decision puts increased impetus on these kinds of things, which is why I'm asking really for your benefit as much as mine.
I appreciate it.
B is certification and education growth. Do you provide anything, discounted tuitions for licensing classes or anything like that that you're able to help your members get involved in to be better trained or skilled for new jobs and new roles?
We have a wide variety of discounts and tuitions that are available. If you want, I can give you the necessary material, but as
I'm asking because it seems like these are great things that I don't hear touted very much on the CSEA side of the ledger, and those are very important to people who'd like to earn more. And they're just thoughts for you, as asking. So then the third one is, do you have a list of discounts? It's family stuff. I don't know that Joanne's, for instance, gives 15% off to school district employees and so on and so forth. Do you have a list of things like that for your members that spouse and family and friends and loved ones can use to add value?
Yes, we have a member benefits package that is given to all new employees, but it's also available to any employee who requests for it. It contains a full list of all benefits, including discounts and tuitions, etc.
Do they apply to trustees? No, just kidding. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening, trustees and Dr. Hudson. I am going to be brief, and I'm sort of talking off the cuff a little bit. I am really excited that the Oakview neighborhood is going to be getting a new park through the Kaboom Park. I got to participate in that 3 summers ago in the Shalimar Park in Costa Mesa, and I worked all day moving wood chips to make this park amazing. The amount of volunteers that come, there's about 100 volunteers, and you really do create a park in 3 days. And so this will just really add to the neighborhood in the Oakview community and for all kids around that want to go to a fun park and play. I'm sure this park will be amazing with brand new equipment. I also just want to comment on our partnership. We have been really focused on the last 4 years. I'm closing my fourth year of my presidency, and when I started, we really started focusing on partnerships and creating partnerships, and they really, really have grown. And the blueprint document is just evidence of that, and it was so exciting to be part of that blueprint committee along with three other teachers, and then I was also working alongside principals and district administrators, and then the parents and business leaders. It just really shows how all stakeholders are involved in the Ocean View School District, and I know I say that a lot. I want to answer some of President Briscoe's questions about what CTA, California Teachers Association, and the Ocean View Teachers Association does as far as for our members and to keep membership. Now that if a person chooses not to be a member, we do not get the agency fees to cover costs to represent them. But one of the things that CTA does is provide a lot of training for teachers so that we can grow and be better at our craft as as teachers. And one of my favorite conferences is the Good Teaching Conference, and I've been about 5 or 6 times. It's offered in Northern California and Southern California, and we usually always send teachers. But of course, if our budget goes, we are not able to do that. And then we also have a summer institute that is at the very beginning of August, and it's a week-long institute. And one of the strands is instructional professional development. And Ocean View, again, did something that was monumental and state-of-the-art. We sent administrators and teachers to the CTA Summer Institute. And they have state-of-the-art trainers in all aspects of student learning. And the teachers that were represented along with the administrators were so excited. This is going to really shape a lot of our professional development in the years coming, and it's a really good deal because our union dues support this. It's a 5-day institute. It costs $600, and it provides room and board. So working together and having our school district work alongside with the California Teachers Association to train our teachers, we are sharing in the financial liability of that, and I think that's really good, and it's a true partnership. Thank you.
Before you go on, would you approach the microphone? I want to make sure I heard that right. Did you say 4 years?
Yes, this is my 4th year.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you.
Amazing, Grace. That was, any other questions? Thank you. We'll move on to item reports L. L1, update on governor's proposed budget.
Now we have the fabulous Dr. Michael Conroy approaching the podium.
Thank you, Dr. Hanson. Good evening, President Briscoe, trustees. Tonight I will have, maybe, an overview of the governor's budget proposal and some of the impacts it has on our district. There we go. Okay. So, some quick thoughts. As we all know, that Governor Newsom is our new governor. When he provided the budget update, realizing that this is a transition, so there wasn't a lot of time for he and his team to really sit down and develop the budget. Most of the items in his budget proposal were the bigger ideas. The details will be worked out in the legislative subcommittees as we go through. I think it's important to recognize that there is a large surplus, state surplus, that was built by Governor Brown. But like Governor Brown, Governor Newsom is also commenting on the likelihood of a recession downturn in the next few years. Then one of the big things in this budget that Governor Brown did not address in the past was the STRS and PERS retirement liability, and he's used some of the funds from the rainy day fund to address that, and I'll speak to that later. UCLA recently came out, their economists, they do an economic summit every year, and their economists were forecasting what they call a 3-2-1 economy, and that's really talking about the slowdown of the economy. In 2018, the gross domestic product is expected to grow 3%. In 2019, the growth is looking at 2%, and then in 2020, a 1% growth. And economists generally consider that once you get to a 1% growth in the gross domestic product, that you're already in a recession. This is a slide that represents the state general fund, not necessarily aligning with the gross domestic product, But the revenues projected by the Department of Finance, which is the governor's finance department, and then the Legislative Analyst Office, which is a nonpartisan group in Sacramento that provides a lot of information about the budget and other state activities. The purple line is the Department of Finance, and that's what the governor built his budget on. The Legislative Analyst Office provided two scenarios, one a growth scenario in the black. The second is a recession scenario, and if we do hit a recession, this is what the Legislative Analyst Office would be projecting. So we're kind of looking at the potential of the two different models, and just that kind of aligns with the UCLA economist forecast of a 3-2-1 economy. As I mentioned, Governor Newsom is building upon Governor Brown's fiscal stability in using some of the funds to build the reserves to address the unfunded liabilities for CalPERS and CalSTRS. And also, so that I will speak to again shortly. So as we get into the K-12, the STRS and PERS, there are two parts of that. The first part is immediate relief, providing one-time funds. What's important is that this is non-Prop 98 funds. So he's taking this from outside of education to be applied over 2 years to reduce employers, meaning school districts, financial obligation in paying for that required contribution that we've been paying for every year. I do want to make a note. The obligation for school districts to pick up the additional PERS and STRS payments started in 2014-15. And in 1 year, benefits here in Ocean View School District, and benefits is statutory payroll benefits, health and welfare, and other retirement benefits. In 1 year, the benefits that we pay as a district exceeded what we paid in classified salaries. And that was the first time that's ever happened. And now our benefits are 25% higher than classified salaries, and that the primary result of that is because of the increased PERS and STRS obligation that we're having to pay to the state. So it's really impacting the district. Here is the kind of a chart outlining the, on the second column in is the current legislative requirements for school districts, and the third column you see where the governor is buying them down in this second and third year, 1920 and 2021, from 18.13 to 17.1, so it's a little bit more than 1% reduction, and then 2021 from 19.1 to 18.1, so a 1% decrease. Starting in 2022, it's projected to go down to 17, a little bit more than 17%, but that has to be set in statute by the STRS board. On the right-hand side is the CalPERS required by the district, and it's important to note that, I put a little note at the bottom, this is not impacting the employees' contribution to their own retirement. Those employees who were hired after January 1st, 2013 are paying a slightly higher rate. Well, that's, excuse me, they started out paying a slightly higher rate. They are now up to 10.205% for their retirement. However, their benefits are less than employees who were hired prior to 2013. And those employees' rate is 10.25%, and that has been for a few years now. When we look at the history of Prop 98 and the LCFF funding, in the green bar, you can see is Prop 98. The black bar was the last year of the revenue limits. And the red bar represents when the LCFF came into place, and you can see the challenges there. On average, when you look at each year, the percent of the Prop 90, the LCFF in relationship to the Prop 98 is about 70%. So about 70% of Prop 98 was going to the LCFF funding. When we look at the LCFF funding started in 13-14. The green bar represents the funding gap to move us toward the full implementation of the LCFF, and the red represents the COLA for those particular years. In 2018-19 is the last year of the LCFF gap funding. It's fully funded. The red is the COLA, and that black box was the augmentation that Governor Brown put in and added to the COLA 0.99% that made this year's COLA 3.7%. And in 18-19, you see it's just a red bar. We are now in a COLA-only environment. There's no more gap funding. We will only get whatever is the COLA. So when we look at the COLA rates that are projected at first interim were the same COLA projections that Governor Brown had at the budget adoption back in June. And on the right hand, the third column on the right is Governor Newsom's projected COLA increases. So you'll see there's 3.7 is for the current year, 18-19. And you can see the slight increases in 19-20 and 20-21. But then in the out year in 21-22, there's a reduction in the COLA. So as we move forward, there's a lot of thought that by the time we get to May revise, these numbers will be adjusted again. The LCF entitlement targets, we've got the base grant for ADA is getting the 3.46 for next year. The grade span adjustments will have the 10.4% increase, and that's our K3 grade span adjustment is increased by 10.4%. We do get the 20% adjusted for the base grant for the supplemental, and that's based upon our unduplicated count. And then we do get the targeted instructional improvement grant, TIG, and home school transportation add-ons are still added into the budget. And those were the figures that school districts had in 12-13. They were fixed dollar amounts, and we receive those every year, and that's just part of the LCFF calculation. They don't change. But that was something that was legislated, put in with Governor Brown to make sure that those funding sources continue for school districts. So one of the things that we, with the onset of the PERS and STIRS increased requirements by school districts to pay, we created this chart of what's the cost of opening the doors before we actually do any business. And so there are three component pieces. We have step and column every year that we project, the Cal STIRS and Cal PERS that we project. And as we look in the out years, we also look at what's the increase in revenue in general fund combined revenues that we expect from year over year. So when we look at 2019-20, we're actually projecting that we're going to receive less funding in our total combined general fund by $1.1 million less than what we're receiving in the current year. So when we look at the less funding plus the increased cost, before we even start any business, we're projecting that we're already behind the 8 ball by about $2.6 million. It gets a little better in 2021 because we're looking at a slight increase in revenues of $144,000, but that's, when you're dealing with $80 million, that's chump change. But it's still almost $1.4 million that we're in the hole before we start. And then it gets a little bit better in 2021. It's $222,000. But over the course of 3 years, you can see that there's a $4 million impact to the school district. When we look at the impact of the governor's budget proposal and realizing we've had this conversation in the past that we're declining enrollment, what's the impact that we look in terms of our funding? So we look at 2019-20, at first interim we were projecting $70,900,000. With the governor's impact, with the increase in the COLA for next year, that would bump that up to $71.5 million. When we adjust it for our declining enrollment, that is going to drop the, we revise our projections, and that will give us $71.6 million. So we're looking at a net increase in funding of about $600,000. It's not a lot. Now, when you take $600,000 and you look at what happens when you open the doors, it's significant. When we look in the out years, and I'll just talk, the next year, at first interim, we were projecting $71.8 million for first interim, and this is, I want to say, this is the unrestricted general fund. That's 80% of all the dollars that we receive in the district is unrestricted, so that's what we live on. The governor's proposal, that would up that to $72.5 million, but because of our declining enrollment, it adjusts that down to $71.7 million. So we're only going to be looking at about $90,000 less in that year compared to what we were projecting at first interim. So declining enrollment has a big impact on us. And so when we look at, we look at the STIRS and the PERS and step and column increases, they are disproportionately outpacing any new revenues that we get because we're in a COLA environment only. A couple of other notes to pay attention to. Special education will be getting the 3.46% COLA. Unfortunately, there's no monies in the budget for equalization for special ed. So we're still dealing with equity issues in terms of funding for our special needs students. School facilities, this is an important one. Governor Newsom is taking a different stance than Governor Brown did in terms of the state bond, and he's releasing funds. And that gives us the opportunity to get in line for state matching money. So we're already got 2 schools in line, and we're looking for about another $400,000 that we'll get from the state for state matching monies. So that's important for what the governor is doing on this. So when we look overall, the challenges that we deal with, as I mentioned, we're continuing to decline, and that has a negative impact on our district funding. As I mentioned, our future funding we're dealing with 4 primary issues. We have declining enrollment, where we have only COLA that we get every year. We have a slowdown in Prop 98, so that's going to address the growth in terms of the future COLAs, and then we know that we've got costs that continue to rise. With a low COLA environment and only having COLA, that impacts programs that need district contributions. And that means our encouragement goes up, and that specifically addresses the big ones of transportation and special education. Unlike in the past, Governor Newsom has no budget line item for the one-time discretionary monies that we've been receiving for the last 4 to 5 years under Governor Brown. He's taken a little bit different budgeting practice than Governor Brown did, but again, we're hoping that this stays strong and we see it in other areas. Although the governor did provide funding and non-Prop 98 to buy down the district's liabilities for pension, there's still no funding stream for the PERS and STIRS for school districts on an ongoing basis. As I mentioned, the increase in PERS and STIRS and step and column, those costs outpace any new revenues that we expect to see. The bottom line, we do have a structural deficit. It requires continued budget reduction forecasting, and there is an importance that we do have substantial reserves. So that concludes my report on the governor's budget and some of the impacts it has on Ocean View School District.
Thank you, Dr. Conroy. Are there any questions? Trustee Clayton-Carlin.
So a couple of the programs that you talked about with the infringement into the general fund were busing and special education. Would you also characterize our preschool programs as infringing on our general our general budget, and is that in the same category as the other 2?
It doesn't encroach. It's not a restricted program. Special education and transportation are under the kind of the restricted category. The preschool is a voluntary program that the district operates. We're talking about OVPP. It's a fee-based program, but that program in itself has been encroaching upon the district's general fund for a couple of years now. And so we are addressing that, and we'll be coming together with a proposal to present to the board at a later date.
So one of my concerns, I think, when I even first started on the board in 2012 was the busing infringement. As many of you know, I work as a teacher in a nearby school district, and there's no busing there. Everybody gets brought to school, or they walk to school, local, neighborhood schools. And one of the concerns that I had when I put my child on the bus, he went to Golden View his first year of kindergarten. I live in the Mesa View tract. He was thrilled to be able to take the bus to school. like I did, and I kind of grew up in a rural county area, not in a city, so I had to take a bus. But I thought it was rather odd to put my child on a bus to go 0.3 miles, and when he got on the bus, he was one of 4 kids. And I asked him, you know, how many kids are finally on the bus by the time you get to school, and it was a full, big, you know, a big bus. I think it's like the 80 or 90 seat bus.
Probably 74.
Okay, so
72, somewhere in that range.
the bigger
Yeah.
bus. And he said, I don't know, Mommy, maybe like 8 kids. And so I talked to the bus driver, who I became friendly with, and she said, you know, maybe 5 to 8 kids every day. And so I kind of did it as an experiment to see what would happen. And then I stopped putting them on the bus because I thought, I guess naively, at the time I wasn't on the board actually, it was in 2010. I thought, well, maybe that's something that if they see there's not a need for it, they're not gonna run the buses, but OVSD kept running the buses. And so what I have felt all along is we've been running buses, but there's really hardly any kids on the buses, but I don't have hard data. Is there any way at some point, like maybe even months to come, that you could show us how many kids ride the bus, like, you know, and like discuss maybe dealing with the infringement? Because if we really are just riding around 5 to 10 kids on a bus, I'm not sure that's a real great use of public funds at this point.
Well, if you're asking me just from the role, the seat that I sit in, I would say I have some, I would agree with you. When we have bus runs, we have to make sure, because, you know, they're all different places. We have a really nifty software program called TransTrax that we're able to track and use it for programming purposes. So we can provide that information to you at another time.
Okay, thank you.
I have been remiss. The question should be addressed to the chair and then to the speaker. So, just a second, Trustee Westervelt. You can stay standing if you'd like, or I recognized you. I believe what Trustee Tarver was saying is, additionally, what is the rationale for each bus route? What's the ridership on the bus route? Does it have 55 kids in the next segment, but it only has 12 or 15 at that segment? Could you explain the buses that we have and why we have them and have us feel really excited about them?
I can provide that. I couldn't tell you at this point.
Not now, I mean later.
Later,
Now,
yes.
So that'd be great, okay, thank you. That's not now, giant project. Trustee Westwell.
Thank you, Trustee Briscoe. On your page 18 here, you're identifying that we do have a structural deficit that requires continued budget reduction and forecasting. I understand that. Times are going to get tough. I think you're sensing that as well. And you say here there's a need for substantial reserves. Right now, I believe we're 3% on that reserve. Can you define what you think substantial reserves should be for our district?
Well, let me clarify. The 3% is the state required minimum reserve for economic uncertainties that we're required to have in our reserve. So when we look at reserves, it should be anything above the 3%. Depending on who you talk to, the rule of thumb is at least 2 months of your monthly expenditures. So that's really the rule of thumb. Some will tell you it's somewhere around the 15 to 17% threshold. So it depends on the size of your district, because obviously the larger the district, the larger your budget, then the numbers shift a little bit. But usually you have at least, if you were to talk to school services or capital advisors, they would tell you 2 months of your monthly expenditures would be a target mark.
And that translates to 15 to 17% of our budget.
As I said,
Is
it
that
all
accurate?
depends on the size of your district. So without
Depending on,
having
I'm talking about our district.
I haven't calculated out what that would equal, but roughly it would be, we're roughly about $5 to $6 million in payroll. So you add on other business expenses. So we're looking over maybe $12 million on top of the 3%, which I believe we're somewhere around the $3 million. So that's roughly about $15 million. Just doing really quickly in my head.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I'm not trying to pin you down to any numbers. I'm just trying to get some ballpark figures for our board so that we can make intelligent decisions too, because 3% to me sounds ridiculously low. And,
3%, remember, that is the state required reserve for economic uncertainty, so you have to have that at a minimum.
I very well understand the statutory requirements, and that's where we're at. We are currently at the absolute statutory minimum,
No, we're not.
3%,
We're above that.
just slightly above it.
No, I think when you look at the current year in our budget, we're above 3%.
4%?
I don't know what the percentage is, but we're more than $2 million or $3 million.
I hope so, because that's the statutory. I have a question about buses. Buses involve expensive buses and expensive people, and we routinely farm out things, outsource things to reduce costs because we find it's cheaper to hire people than to use inside staff and inside equipment and all this other stuff. When's the last time we looked at outsourcing our buses in order to save money?
The assertion was made that it's always cheaper to have outside rather than employees, is that correct?
No, it's not. We
Let me
contract.
credit many times. I misspoke many times.
Is it many times cheaper to have?
It's not cheaper to contract with outside busing.
Thank
We
you.
do it because we don't have enough bus drivers.
So thank you. So I'm not sure, Trustee Westfall, where your question is leading. If you're going to ask.
Well,
if
my
we've done
question
a
was,
study-
if I may finish, Trustee Briscoe.
Yes, address me and I will help.
Yes, Mr. Briscoe, I am addressing you. Thank you for recognizing that I'm addressing you.
Thank you.
Let me restate the question again. When was the last time that we did any sort of analysis to confirm that outsourcing, with all that goes with that, and all that goes with insourcing, PERS and STIRS and everything else that goes with it, and you add the two together, when's the last time we did that analysis to see which is cheaper?
So Dr. Conroy, have we had an outhouse and in-house analysis?
We routinely look, every time we get in preparation for a budget adoption, we look at those costs in terms of what the impact is on the district. So I would say we've done it recently.
A very good friend of mine
Can you
used to work
define
for Long
recently,
Beach,
please?
so.
Can you define recently? Because
So,
recently can be anywhere from a couple of years.
Dr. Conroy, would it be possible for you to present a brief overview of?
Trustee Briscoe, I had a question I'd like to have answered, and you're ossificating my question.
Obfuscating your question. Would it be possible to have an analysis for Trustee Westfall and the board on budget comparisons for in-house and out-house?
I'll work with Dr. Hanson and we can work that into a future board meeting.
Trustee
Thank you,
Westfall?
that'd be great. That's just not for me, that's for the whole board.
Yes.
Thank you, I have no other questions.
Dr. Hanson, you had your hand raised. I distinctly saw you go over there.
I just wanted to check to make sure that that's a desire of the entire board to do this type of analysis at this time. I do believe that Dr. Conroy and his staff do look on a very peripheral view of their budget concerns about should we investigate further on contracting out on certain issues, using their knowledge of basic expenditures in school districts. But a more in-depth study, would require resources and time and money, and I want to make sure that I understand what you're asking for before we pursue this.
I would call on Trustee Westfall to describe in his view what they were on. Yeah, well, okay. Trustee Clinton Carter.
I believe maybe it was in my second year on the board, something like that was already done. We may have data, obviously it's not up to date, but it's similar because you're looking at, you could update it with current hourly wages or whatever it is, or whatever we pay to outsource. My feeling is that we should always use our own employees. I'm not for outsourcing ever. I like to keep everything in-house, but unfortunately, we just don't have the bodies, is what I've been told, to be able to run all of these, whatever you want to call them. Yeah, the routes, thank you, the routes, and so there's a problem, but we're running routes that may not be necessary. I'm not sure that I'm interested in a full-blown analysis, and even if we do get to that point, it may not be for another 6 months, or I don't know what it is. That's not a priority to me
No.
at this point. If it's something you wanna take up at another time, I think that it would be okay. I'm not interested in directing the staff to do that at this time.
I can pull the board, or Dr. Hanson, you have a comment?
My recommendation would be that you and I, as president and superintendent, work on when's the best time to address this and in which manner to address
I
it.
think that's a great idea. Any objection from the rest of the board? And then I would use, the last time that report was given, I've seen a couple of them, it was 3 or 4 pages. It's not rocket science. It's just a view of what that looks like. That's a good idea. So we need to dig up some of those. Any other questions from the board? I have a few. Oh, you attended USC, is that correct?
Yes.
Did it hurt your hand to write USCLA's economic outlook instead of USC's economic outlook?
No, because I typed it.
Okay, the CalSTRS relief for employers. I think there was an audible gasp in the room when our auditor informed us we had a negative $5 million district net worth because of the unfunded pension liability. That's if we sold all of our property and all the value and assets that we had, we'd be worth minus $5 million. If everybody remembers that a couple meetings ago. You made a comment that the projected rates don't impact employees' contributions, but I want to draw everybody's attention to the fact that the increasing contribution rates for employers impacts employees because there's less money in the till to deal with recognition of longevity for step and column, and less money in the till for pay and raises, including even pay enough to keep up with inflation. So this underfunded pension liability is a huge giant problem for the district ongoing. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Conroy, but also it's a problem for our employees because there's less money to talk about. And it's a serious problem, and the dribble-drabble that the governor put in is just icing on the cake. Does it really fix the problem?
It's not fixing the problem,
Thank you.
you know, and that's why I put that one slide opening the doors to show the impact of what the PERS and STRS liability, how that's impacting the district.
It's huge. We're going to be paying 25% for the PERS responsibility coming up in just 4 years, 5 years. Is that correct?
That's correct.
$1 out of every $4 is going to go for retirees and current employees.
Correct.
And that leaves nothing for desks and things for the kids and folks. Is that correct?
It has an impact, yes, sir.
The, let's see, last year, yeah, just to be clear, when you say COLA, you're talking about the statutory COLA voted on by the state legislature for funding public schools subsequent to Prop 13 passing that relies on an inflation deflator based on the Department of Commerce governmental agency deflator table. Is that correct?
Well, I don't know exactly how they're manipulating or how they adjust it, but this is the information that the Department of Finance provides to the governor that he puts in his proposal, and that's what we work with.
It's not a wage COLA like Social Security. It's not a CPI COLA like the basket of goods. It's the statutory COLA. Is that
Correct.
what? Thank you. It's important because I'll recognize you, Trustee Westall. Thank you. Transportation. What is the total transportation encroachment in our budget? You told me it's about $1 million. Just
I believe it's, you know, look at the numbers today, and I'm going to say, you know what, I'll have to get back to you. I don't want to misspeak.
okay. It's big.
It's big.
Okay. And I made all his notes so I wouldn't have to interrupt you. At the same time, I'll talk with Dr. Hanson about looking at our bus encroachment and our fee for service And we might look at some innovative programs to increase bus usage. And we'll look at a break-even point of bus fee for service usage if such a number exists for filling the buses up. That's the end of my questions. Trustee Westwell?
In the new governor's budget, is there money included in his budget for the high-speed train to nowhere?
I don't recall it.
Okay. Is there money included in the governor's budget for climate satellite that he's talked about?
I could not address that.
You know, these are questions that I have because the state seems to just be foolish with our dollars. And these are the things that they've actually spent money on before, and they've talked about spending it. Meanwhile, the education of kids is primary in our state, the future of our state, and it just seems like the Democrats up north give a lot of lip service to education and give no money for it. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions for the good doctor? Then thank you very much, Dr. Conlon.
I'll just stand up here for the next one.
Oh, okay. We'll move on to item L2, construction update, Measure R fencing project. There's a handout on the dais in front of all the trustees. Feel free to open or look at the slideshow.
Well, we'll continue on. President Frisco, I would like to acknowledge that we do have some of our construction modernization staff here from the Desmond Meyer, Milo Stang, and George Mick. They're sitting in the back, and Jim Choate. So that's 2/3 of our construction team. Our architect, Kevin Fleming, was unable to make it tonight.
We brought Cool Hand Luke to sit up right behind you. Should they all come up too?
He's my right-hand man. He knows if there's a number, he'll find it for me.
Okay, thank you.
And I do have to acknowledge that on the budget piece that Keith Farrow, who's our Director of Fiscal Services, is doing a stellar, outstanding job in managing our Fiscal Services Department and helping me with our budget.
Thank you.
So going on to construction. So tonight the purpose is to provide you an update with our fencing projects at our various school sites. Now we've advertised in December. The bids are due later this month, and we'll be looking for board approval in March, and then to start the project shortly thereafter. The modernization or the construction for the fencing is about 49 days per school, and you can see there are 5 different phases within the project that we're doing. So as a contractor finishes their phase, they will move to the next school, and so we're doing like an assembly line change so that we can keep them engaged. As soon as they start the project, they'll just go from one school to the next, and we're looking that we will start the project in March with Westmont as part of their modernization, and then we'll move on. The only school that we are definitely going to be doing second will be Village, because Village is involved with summer school, and we want to make sure the fencing project is completed before we start summer school. The others will be looking just in terms of the timing and the amount of work that has to be done at the school sites. We expect to be finished at the end of August before school starts, that these schools will have their fencing project completed. What I'm going to share with you now is the location of what the fencing is, and I want to recall with the board, the directions was to enclose the schools with to the perimeter, that the face of the school, the front school, would be wrought iron, or I should say decorative tubular steel. The fencing between the schools and the parks would be tubular steel, and then elsewhere we would put chain link. The perimeter would be 8 feet, and fencing we do on the interior would be 6 feet. We're not doing any interior fencing. That will be done when the modernization of those schools actually come about. But we are enclosing the schools with the premise that we'll have a single point of entry to the school, meeting the front office. So Westmont is part of the modernization. The blue line represents the tubular steel or wrought iron. The green represents the chain link. Now this is because it's the modernization of Westmont. That's why you'll see fencing on the interior of the school. I do want to point out, Trustee Briscoe, this little area right here, guess what that is?
Bike cage.
It's a bike cage.
Really?
Yes, it is. So this is Westmont. So we move on to Village. Now, Village uniquely really has the least amount of work to be done because it's, for the most part, enclosed on three sides with the community. Now, at the upper, that would be the north side, there's a second parking lot that has a rolling fence that's already there, so we're not going to be changing that out until the school actually goes through modernization. So the front, what you can see, all these blue lines will be the tubular steel between the buildings to enclose the school. And then we've got at the front here on both sides of the NPR, we'll have the tubular steel fencing that will now enclose the school. So when they get to their modernization, we'll address the rest of the fencing component, but they will be enclosed. At Harbor, yes, Harbor. So we've got, there are really two parts of the campus. When we look up here in Heil, all the way down Heil and then down Algonquin is currently a 6-foot chain link fence. We're not going to be addressing that. Well, we will be addressing the front of the school in the lower right-hand corner. This is the kindergarten wing right here, the play area. And I believe that fence line is 4 feet. And so that is going to be the tubular steel. And then we're going to come down to on the west side of the fence with the tubular steel. And then from this point is the end of the blacktop, and we'll go all the way to Heil, and that will be the tubular steel as well. So we'll enclose the school. And then down on the east side, we're going to go from the corner of the main building across the drive area and then down along in front of the condominium complex. This will require some community work and outreach with the homeowners and residents in that area to share with them the fencing project, just so that they can hear what the project is going to be, and we'll listen to their concerns. It's similar to what we did when we had the initial outreach at college and through the CEQA process. Next school is Circle. So again, in the lower left-hand corner, this is the kindergarten play area. So we're going to start at the front of the school, connecting with the NPR, across the parking lot, and then around the kindergarten area. And then from this point up along the street side will be chain link, and then we'll do the tubular steel through the park area up to the block wall where the homeowners live. Now, this area right in here, the distance between the blacktop and our property line, the wrought iron, is about 7 feet. So it's very close to, the blacktop. I was out on the campus. We were walking the lines where the fencing was going to go with Desmond Meyer and staff, and it just happened at that time the city maintenance workers were working in the park. And we had recess going on, so we had kids in here and we had the city workers. So, a very dangerous situation. And couldn't tell you, but I could get a pretty good guess that the city workers probably weren't fingerprinted. The same. So down here, we're trying to create an entry so it's one way into the school. So this is the front office right here. So right outside the office, there will be the tubular steel that connects the office with the NPR. There will be a pedestrian gate and a double gate, and then we'll go from the corner of the building across the open area here. There will be the double gate here and a pedestrian gate underneath the walk area, and then we'll come along the sidewalk grass line down to the curb, and then down to the end. And then up against the block wall, and then we're going to clean up the fence line there with chain link. So this is what we're doing at Circle. At Hope, a lot of fencing. So if we're looking at the east side of the campus, which is up at the top here, from the street side all the way down to the channel will be the tubular steel. So that will be a very long expanse way. Down at the bottom here, in green, that will be chain link. Currently, it's about a 3-foot chain link fence. It doesn't provide anything other than a demarcation line between the parking lot and the park, so that will be 8-foot chain link. And then starting right here at the end of where the portables are in the parking lot, we'll go with the tubular steel across the walkway and connect with the building. And then we'll come over to where the fence line currently is and put in the wrought iron fence around the kindergarten area. So this part here is the kindergarten area. It's currently a 4-foot chain link fence up off the, there's a retaining wall, brick retaining wall, but we're going to put the 8-foot wrought iron tubular steel fencing there. So on the inside, it will be 8 feet. It'll be higher if you were on the sidewalk. And then from the end of the kindergarten all the way down to the fence line here, we're going to put 8-foot chain link. So that will enclose circle, and they will have one point of entry into their front office through their front door there. At Golden, we've got the park, and so we'll go from the property line across the park area down toward the end of the sidewalk here. This area right here is a big, tall concrete, I think it's a trash enclosure. So we're going to come right up to that, and we're going to put some fencing on top of the concrete wall. It's only about 4 feet, so we're going to put 4 feet of tubular steel, and then come around on the other side and connect with the building. And Trustee Briscoe, you know what this area is right on the inside here?
A real bike cage?
It's a bike cage.
Not just a 3-foot wall?
No, it's going to be 8 foot on the perimeter, so it will be secluded on the campus. And then over on the east side of the campus, we're going to, the chain link fencing, we're going to clean that up to be 8-foot chain link. And lake. So if we're talking the north side of the campus, down here is, we'll come across, there's a sidewalk, and that is on the other side of the property line, so we'll have the wrought iron come down, just coming southward, and then it will head east to the parking lot. And we currently have chain link fence down here, and we will be addressing that to raise that to 8 feet. When we get to the sidewalk here, we'll come along the sidewalk, past the concrete walkway to the front, and then come up to the building. There'll be a double gate here, open at the beginning of school for access into the school. So that will be the lake project. And that's my update.
Trustee Singer.
I just want to commend you for such a great presentation. I think I'm really excited to see these fences. I think that our schools need that security, and as a parent, I advocated for this, so it's exciting to see it happening, so thank you for doing that. One thing that I know that you're going to be working, I'm sure, is ensuring that those gates are open and closed, because we do have a lot of neighborhood parks, and I know that a lot of community members express the frustration of, well, what about parks, will we not have access? And I know that that is something you will also ensure that it gets addressed.
And what Jim Choate and his supervisors, they'll be working with our custodians, the day custodian, night custodians, in terms of, there's going to be some behavior management changes in terms of behavior in the mornings, having to open the gates, and the night crew having to lock the gates at night. So we realize that we want to make sure that when the students arrive in the morning, that we don't have activity from the night before on the playgrounds and the lunch benches, so that it's a safe, secure, and a healthy environment for the kids when they come to school in the morning.
Any other board questions? Trustee Westwell?
Thank you, Trustee Briscoe. I'm just realizing that with these higher 8-foot fences abutting our buildings, we may have opportunities for people to more easily climb the fence and gain access to our roofs. They're very expensive and is an ongoing problem. So I would like to have someone pay attention to where these things come together, where the fences meet a building, and let's eyeball it and see, let's try to make sure that we don't have roof access or somehow we prevent that, because that's an expensive problem in itself. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Trustee Souders.
Just a couple. One accommodation in terms of harbor view. I think that was we do need to work with the community members there in the condos. Along the line down here, I know that a lot of their front doors open right. There's like a path, and their front door opens to that, and so they should be aware that they're going to soon open their doors to an 8-foot high.
We've had conversation in terms of we will need to do some outreach with the homeowners there and have some parent or some community meetings at Harvard to address that.
Yeah, that's great, and I think that's definitely the direction to go in. And then the other question I had is just a general question with all of these. Have we taken into consideration the modernization and will these fences need to be changed as the modernization takes place, or are they pretty much set in stone, this is where they're gonna be, and then we're gonna work around them as far as the modernization is
Well,
concerned?
the intent is we want to do it one time.
Right.
So we're being thoughtful in terms of where we're making those connections to the building. And we realize that some schools, the front door is on the inside of the campus. And so when we go to modernization, we'll be taking that into consideration to do something like we did at Westmont, where we put the front of the entrance on the front of the school.
Right.
And that's what we did at Westmont. So those are things that will come up during the modernization as we look at how to improve the flow and egress and ingress at each of our campuses.
Okay, and they can be, I mean, if like, say a backhoe needs to get in, you could take off during modernization, like a section of fence, allow them
Yeah.
to put it in. Okay,
Yeah.
that's
But
good.
we will be having double gates at identified locations to allow access through the property too.
Okay, thank you.
So we'll have double gates as well as pedestrian gates.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? I had a few. I want to draw your attention to current practices at several of the school sites where the kindergarten, it's a German word. The kindergarten lets out on a separate gate in a separate place apart from the rest of the campus. Village View is that way. Hope View is that way. Correct me if I'm wrong, Trustee Clayton Carbon. It lets out on the south side of the campus, not north. And then the parents all wait out there for the kids to come streaming out. And it's only a 3-foot high brick wall with a set of stairs up. They don't do that there anymore?
There's, in the morning, they come in that direction. I'm pretty sure in the afternoon you can get them there as well, but I don't know the logistics. It's been different ways, so you'd have to ask.
I just want to draw your attention to checking out where we might need gates that are lockable when we don't use them to let the students out or in. And Village View has the same thing. Their kindergarten is off to one side and the parents come and go from a separate gate, really unconnected to the rest of the campus. I hope View's that way, I think. Okay, then the other question I have, are these topographical maps, those long skinny lines, or topo?
I'm gonna say, I think so. I don't know.
Is that Grizzly Adams in the back? Okay, just a minute, Trustee Clayton. So it's topographical, that's interesting. I want to remind you to look at the Golden View ingress egress at the bottom, and then you're going to check into some other alternatives for controlling incoming and outgoing of those stadium gate things maybe.
Which gate are we
Those finger things that you can,
Those finger things, yes.
thank you. Any other questions, Trustee Clayton Tarver?
Well, this looks like, this is not a traditional topographical map because you don't see altitudes and you would see different types of lines. I know, but I don't believe, that doesn't look like altitude to me, but maybe it is. But it looks like the way, there should be some kind of a,
I may say, I don't believe it's a topographical map, but the purpose of this is to identify where the fencing will go.
Trustee Souders.
I seriously hope that it's not a topographical map, because you've got elevation lines running right through soccer fields, so. And they're not running uphill.
And I can't say what those lines are.
Do we know why there are soccer field marks on these maps?
No, I cannot address that.
I'd like you to.
Again, the purpose of this is just to identify where the fencing is gonna go, not what's on the outline or the lines on the graph or the fields. We just want to show you where the fencing will go.
Okay, well, these are all technical. Is Mr. Choke's gonna stay back in the buffer zone and
Being
go up
safe.
here? So I wanna make the observation that one way to have our fields not be used and abused, that Trustee Souders and I worked and talked about, is to not have fixed designated designs for lines, but to make the teams move them around so the grass doesn't get all worn out if possible. And at Harborview, my son played there. They definitely play soccer on the top portion parallel to Heil Street, so, okay, that's the end of my comments. Any other comments? Thank you very much, Dr. Conroy.
Thank you.
I would like to ask our board clerk for a ruling, parliamentary procedure ruling. My question, Mr. Clerk Souders, is your view from a standpoint of Robert's Rules of Orders that we're operating under for raising your hand with the middle finger raised. Is that a normal and appropriate way to ask for recognition from the chair for Robert's Rules of Order?
No, Robert's Rules of Order is pretty strict on decorum, and it advises for a level of decorum that we don't normally see in public discourse. In terms of being recognized, there's two different ways that you can be recognized, or that Robert's Rules covers that. First would be in large bodies, legislative bodies, and the second would be in small boards such as this one. And it says on page 29, to claim the floor, a member rises at his place. This is for large bodies when no one else has the floor, or goes to the microphone in a large hall and faces the chair and says, Mr. President, or Mr. Chairman, or Madam Chairman, or whatever it is the chair's proper title. That again would be in large bodies. In small bodies, I found that usually, members may raise a hand instead of standing or when seeking to obtain the floor, and they may remain seated while making motions or speaking. And the only other thing that I found in terms of, well, there's a lot actually, but I haven't read through the entire thing, in terms of decorum, is that that decorum is something that is stressed in terms of being polite and respectful to the other members of the board as much as possible, including referring to them in the third person and not using names. No one on the board should ever be referred to as trustee so-and-so and trustee such and such. It should be, or trustee Clayton Tarver, trustee Westwell. It should be the trustee at the far end of the dais, or the trustee to my left, or the trustee to my right, or the trustee who just commented. And when referring to the president, president should always be referred to as Mr. President, or whatever the title of the person is. And in our case, it's the president, so it would be Mr. President, I have a question. And again, all questions are run through the chair, which in this case would be the president as well.
Thank you. So if I have occasion to be presented with a impaired hand raised and a middle finger on top of that raised, I'll be asking you for a parliamentary ruling on dealing with that at that time. And it sounds like you would deal with it both from a decorum and common courtesy standpoint as well as a recognition standpoint. Is that correct?
It is, and I'll continue to research this topic.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to item M, the consent calendar. No, yeah, that's it. We're here at consent calendar. M1, administrative services, gifts to the district. Oh, did I read all? No, the consent calendar is all there for the glory to be read by you if you want to have a copy of the agenda. The consent calendar, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve.
I would move.
A second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. There is no discussion. I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? It is approved 5-0. We're going to move on to old business, item N. There is no old business. Item O, new business, only 4. O1, Administrative Services, Resolution number 12:1819, resolution implementing pre-qualification of construction contractors under Public Contract Code Section 20111.6 on the agenda for action. I'd like to hear a motion to approve.
I will move.
A second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? There's no opposition. It's approved 5-0. Item 02, Administrative Services, substitution for subcontractor on Westmont Modernization Project 17-301, Category 12, Glazing and Storefront. This is on the agenda for action tonight. I need a motion to approve.
I will move.
Is there a motion to second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? I see no discussion. I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? There's no opposition. It's approved 5-0. Item 03, Educational Services, 2018-2019, single plans for student achievement for Ocean View School District, revised plans for Golden View and Starview schools to reflect Title I funding action. It's on the agenda for action. I'd like to have a motion to approve. A motion to second.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Trustee Westwell.
Thank you. I've read these single plans over and I'm very disappointed. The language that I see in here is global language. It's language, looking at this school site at the 50,000 foot level. And really, the site plan needs to be all the way down at the grassroots level. And I don't think this is addressing the grassroots needs of the schools. I think it's just, these are ended up being compliance documents to just satisfy the statutory requirements. And it's all fluff. And it's not doing any justice to the students' achievement in our schools. I find that to be disappointing. Our state standards are not being met for all of our students. Our core values and our vision statements all talk about, great learning for all students, and we're having severe problems just making the state standards. That's problematic for me. We don't have any stated goals on these site plans relating to state standards. We are required to teach to the state standard, and we're not doing it. We don't even identify that we have a problem. If you don't identify a problem, you're never going to get to the solution, in my opinion. We've been doing a lot of expensive staff development, and I'd like to find out when all this is going to pay off, because I'm not seeing it. So I'd like to ask a few questions about that in a little bit. And I'd also, I'd like to, let's see. What I'd like to see in this document that I'm not seeing is some sort of specifications of what we expect. I'd like to see a 90% achievement on all state standard testing. I think it's doable, I think it's makeable, I think it's a goal that we should be attaining. But we don't have goals like that. We have fluff goals like, we're just going to improve achievement for all students. And we say it repeatedly over and over and over and over. We don't do it. We need specific goals. And this is the document where you should see specific goals, and they're just not in there. State standards is what we should be working towards. One of my questions is, it looks like there's 100 students that were actually used for the statistics in here. Mr. President, how do we select the 100 kids that were used for these students? Did we just cherry pick these students, or was it random?
Can you draw our attention to what page that's located on, Trustee Westphal?
Page 119. Third paragraph.
English learners, or third paragraph,
Of
English.
the 100 students tested. First line.
Students, okay.
So how did we come up with 100 students? Did we just randomly pick them, or we picked the best ones?
So,
Or the worst ones? Or exactly what do we pick these
Superintendent
students?
Hanson, where does that number 100 derive?
Those are the identified English learners
There are 100 identified English language learners.
at the particular school in the 16-17
Happens to
school
be a
year.
round number that looks oddly even, but it happens to be a 100 number. So the 100 trustee Westwell, is the number total universe. That would be n equals 100.
Thank you, that was a round number, and you suspected the same thing I did. According to board bylaw 9,000, it's the board's responsibility for holding staff accountable. When are we going to hold our staff accountable for not making state standards, Mr. President?
Well, trustee Westwell, we hire a superintendent to do that. We're over the 3 minutes that we normally accord each trustee before we move on to the next trustee. So,
Mr. President,
Superintendent Hanson,
each person gets 10 minutes according to Robert's Rules of Order. And my clock apparently hasn't even started because it's sitting on 3 minutes.
You're at 5, trustee Westwell.
Can we fix the clock so that I know how much time I have like the rest of the trustees get, please?
And the 10-minute rule, I'm not familiar with the 10-minute rule.
Our parliamentarian could look that up for you. if you'd like.
10-minute rule.
He is in fact actually correct that it's 10-minute rule, unless we limit discussion, but it's usually a 10-minute rule per person.
I would go with 5 minutes heretofore, and if you could time us, or I'll have Vice President.
Well, if you could give back some of my time, because we've tied it up now in these point of orders and parliamentary decision making, and that's using up my time.
I'll grant 30 extra seconds, 5 minutes and 30 seconds. Please begin.
Okay, so why aren't our staff being held accountable, and when are they going to be held accountable, Mr. President? Because under board bylaw 9,000, that's one of this board's responsibilities.
Dr. Hanson, who evaluates our staff at a school site, at these 2 school sites specifically?
I evaluate the principals, and the principals evaluate the classified and certificated staff.
Are the principals trained in evaluation?
Yes.
Do you evaluate their evaluation? You check the checkers?
I actually, I do not do that personally, but Mr. Avila does.
So we have a rigorous system in place to evaluate both the evaluators and the evaluatees.
I feel confident that there are systems in place to evaluate the administration, teachers, and classified staff adequately.
Thank you, trustee Westwell.
You've used up a significant portion of my time. Let me remind you, so please extend time. On page 82, instead of score on academic performance, I recommend we change the language to meet state standards, because that's what we are required to do, meet state standards.
Trustee Westwell, are you
And then on
Trustee Westwell,
page
Trustee Westwell,
83,
before you...
excuse me, I'm not done, Mr. President, not quite done. I'll let you know when I'm done. Thank you. On page 83, I'd like to add the language in there that says add and achieve at a minimum the state standards. I'd like to get the state standards in here, because we're not teaching to the state standard, we're not even attempting to, and I'd like to start doing that. I've looked at the statistics on pages, all the statistic pages, 86, 87, and I'm seeing that we're not doing so well. For English learners, for Golden View, 56% of our learners, we like to call them now, are not meeting the standards. That's not acceptable. When I'm looking over at the mathematics, 63% of our students are not making the state standards. And I see this all the way through here. I see pages that aren't signed with signatures.
Trustee Westwell, where's the page missing?
Well, no, wait, I have very little time, so let me just go over this stuff. You can, take the time to read it for yourself and take a look at it any time you like. We're supposed to be, on page 109, it says we're supposed to be implementing the state standards of academic content, performance standards, yet, 67% of our students are failing, and we're not addressing that directly, and that's a problem for me. So all the way through here, I'd like to see that we achieve or exceed state standards as a very minimum. On page 110, it says pupil outcomes, pupil achievement. This is the kind of fluff language I see. Performance on standardized tests, score on academic performance index, share of pupils that are college and career ready, share of English learners that become English proficient, English learner reclassification rate priority for it. Some of these sentences it doesn't even make sense what it's saying. I don't know how we're supposed to teach to that. When we take a look at some of the other statistics on 114 and 115, on English, 37% of our students, 1/3 are not making the state standards. And on mathematics, for STAR on page 117, again, over 1/3 are not making the state standards. This board likes to pat itself on the back and congratulate itself on what a great job that we're doing. But I want to remind this board, we are not getting close to even making the state standards. If we want to compare ourselves to the other mediocre districts around us, that's great. That's not acceptable to me. I don't care about the other districts around us. I care about our district. I care about the constituents that elected us and put us all here. They expect their students to be educated to the state standard, and I don't think we're trying hard enough. I think the bar is set way, way too low, and we're not holding our employees accountable for this. And I think it's time to do so. Now, these are my comments. I'm sure they're not shared by the board. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Westro. Superintendent Hanson, from whence is the single site plan for student achievement derived?
It is developed in collaboration with district office input with guidance from the State Department. And also the school site council does consult and does approve. And this, keep in mind that these are our new Title I schools, so they are approved by the school site council.
So the document is approved or not approved and derived from the school site council, is that correct?
Yes, there is consultation and guidance from the educators.
Can a principal override the school site council?
No,
Can a superintendent override the school site council?
no,
No. Can a school board override the school site council arbitrarily, as suggested from some quarters, put in new objectives and goals?
not exactly.
We can't just change it. It's a negotiation and a discussion.
That is correct.
Thank you. So if we wanted to negotiate and discuss, we would have to have the school site council come in here as indicated, as formed, from the principal down to the parent and community members, and then we would negotiate and talk to them about what language they might want different. If they don't want to change the language, there's not anything we can do about it. Is that correct?
Well, there are stricter regulations as far as approval for Title I schools with school site council, and that's what these are.
And these are. So whether we like it or not, this is their vote, their review, and their approval. Is that correct?
That is correct, and then I may add, I do believe that these are adequate, and I commend our staff for the work that they do on regularly monitoring and providing assistance on the school plans.
In addition to the perfunctory administrative process of school single site plans for student achievement approvals, not advisory, not consulting approvals, and who is or is not allowed to change those plans, and the answer is nobody. The plans that we have here before us are all fully legally compliant, and they set goals and objectives that comport to what a Title I school would need to work on. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Thank you. Didn't say it. No, I'm just kidding. Is there any other question? Yes, Trustee Planetaro.
Mr. President, my colleague at the end of the dais is speaking this evening in a very dishonorable manner about our employees and about our students, and it deeply concerns me as a parent of the school district. And as a parent of a child who was in the English Learner Program at Hopeview, and is now out of the program, thank you to the teachers of Hopeview who made that possible. I can tell you as a person who speaks multiple languages that it is very difficult to learn a second language. It's even more difficult to be able to take state standardized tests in a language that is not your native language. When we're talking about Starview and Golden View, and the students that are there and identified as second language learners or English learners or as socioeconomically disadvantaged, we're talking about a very sensitive group, vulnerable group, our most vulnerable students in the school district. And to have them be described in such a manner as dishonorably as the trustee at the end of the dais, it just, again, begs the question, why do we have to, at every single meeting, listen to such dishonorable discourse. I don't know why we have to keep doing this. I do know that there is one way to correct it. It's at the ballot box in 2020. That's one way to correct it, so that we could have a cohesive board that does actually support the students and staff. I'm proud of the scores in the Ocean View School District. Our scores are above state and county average in any measure. Our staff, and most importantly, our students and their parents, deserve respect and not disrespect of the dishonorable nature that keeps popping up. So I approve of these plans. I would not want to do anything that overrides the school site council, because they, at a Title I school, have the ultimate say on these sorts of things, and they've weighed in already. So what I would suggest, Mr. President, is we spend no more time on this. I'd like to call the question.
There's been a move to call a question. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? There's no discussion. We go to a vote. All those in favor of calling the question, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? I thought I heard 4 votes. Did I hear 5, Trustee Westwell? We have a vote to call the question. Did you vote?
Did you call for the nay votes, Mr. President?
All those say nay. I'm going to call for the vote again. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Trustee Westwell, do you care to vote? An abstention vote will carry with the majority. You'll be on record as voting yes.
As it should be, Trustee Briscoe.
Thank you. We have a 4 in favor aye, no nays, and 1 apparent abstention. Chair will call it an abstention.
Point of order.
Yes, Trustee Westwell.
I did not abstain, so why are you
I didn't
changing my vote to abstention, Mr. President?
I didn't hear a
Point
vote.
of order, I'd like to call for a roll call vote.
Thank you, Trustee Clayton Tarvin. Trustee Souders, would you tell me, Mr. Parliamentarian, if I can just have a roll call vote, or do I need to have a vote to have a roll call vote?
That is something I would have to research.
Point of order.
Yes, Trustee.
I believe,
Westwell.
Mr. President, you can call the vote any way you like.
I'm going to call for a roll call vote, starting with Trustee Singer. To call the question.
Aye.
Trustee Clayton Tarvin.
Sorry, aye.
Trustee Souders.
Aye.
Trustee Westwell.
Westwell is aye.
And Trustee Briscoe is aye. The question's been called. We're going to go to the vote. For the question regarding item 03, educational services, I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? I'm going to call for a roll call vote. Trustee Singer.
Aye.
Trustee Clayton Tarvin.
Aye.
Trustee Souders.
Aye.
Trustee Briscoe's aye. Trustee Westwell.
Westwell, no.
The motion passes 4-0. Trustee Westwell in opposition. All those in favor. Item 04, educational services, revised independent contractor agreement between Ocean View School District of Orange County and TechSmart Inc. This is on the agenda for action. I need a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
Clayton, approved. Second. Trustee Singer. Is there any discussion? Trustee Westwell?
Thank you, Trustee Briscoe. I have some questions.
Yes, what are your questions?
Mr. President, when did this particular vendor, TechSmart, actually sign the original contract?
Superintendent Hanson, can you help us with that? It says Bruce M. Levin can sign the...
I'm going to ask Dr. Conroy to address this as he's researched this matter.
Thank you, Dr. Conroy.
As I understand, the reference is to this current contract. We haven't sent it to the contractor to have signed yet. We're waiting for board approval. After board approval, we will send it for signature of which they would sign and I would sign.
So is there an original contract, or is this the original
Well,
contract?
this is a revised contract of one that was brought before, which was signed. Since this is a revision, we don't always bring contracts forward that have been signed by the contractor.
Can you help us understand when the original was signed?
I believe the original was signed, and I think, and let's see, in July, the board approved, so I believe shortly thereafter that the original contract was signed by the district and by the contractor.
Does that answer your question, Trustee
That would
Westphal?
be July of 2008, is that correct?
Is that 2018, Dr. Conlon?
18?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, great.
Does that satisfy you, Trustee Westphal?
No, it does not.
And you-
Why did we wait 7 months to amend this contract? If we did the contract back in July of 2018, and it was brought before the board, and I remember we voted for it, I wouldn't have voted for it had I known what I know now about this contract. Why did we wait 7 months? If we just figured out that there's an error on here, why didn't we take care of this right away? Why did we wait 7 months?
Dr. Conroy, can you comment on our error detection system that discovered this, and is it a normal and customary discovery?
I
Or did it
believe the
just-
discovery of the absence of the expenses was identified in November, December, was brought forward then to do an addendum in January. So because of the holidays, that extended it, so it wasn't 7 months, there was some time it was identified and brought forward to the district, so that's when the district started to move forward to do the addendum.
So thanks to Trustee Westwell's clever sleuthing and prior contract reading that he brought with him, we were able to discover that difference and bring back a contract approval that matches what we expected to be there. Is that correct?
That's correct, that's why this is a revised contract.
Thank you. Trustee Westwell, does that,
I had another question. Why is it this company, TechSmart, signed the contract in July of 2018 and were apparently okay with the contract because they signed it, and they're now coming back with their handout for $5,900 more? Help me to understand this, because if we went to TechSmart and said, well, gee, we inadvertently didn't charge you enough. We need to increase that amount by $5,900. What do you suppose they'd say to that? It's a rhetorical question. I know what they would say to it. They'd say, look at your contract. So why aren't we doing the same thing? Why aren't we holding them to the contract that they signed? Please answer the
Dr.
question.
Conroy, what's the total value of the contract?
$38,500.
The contract is $38,500, there is the expenses not to exceed $5,900.
In broad brush terms, an error of omission or error of commission?
It was an error of omission. When TechSmart provided the proposal to us, they did identify expenses that would be part of the contract. When this contract was originally brought forward, we were in a transition of staff, and it was missed on our part of not including it in the original contract. I can't address why they signed it, why they didn't.
So
I can't address that, but that was omission on our part.
you're telling us the vendor expected to be reimbursed for expenses all along. They exposed that expectation, told us they expected it. It just didn't get in the contract. We'd agreed to the expenses. It just wasn't there, and so now they're coming back, and you're coming back and saying the contract needs to be $5,000 bigger. Is that it?
That's correct.
Does that satisfy you? Well, it's not a happy situation, but does that answer your question, Trustee Westwell?
I understand what happened. Certainly I do. I also understand signed contracts. And Mr. President, I also understand this board has a fiduciary duty not to waste taxpayer dollars. Now, they signed a valid contract. When I buy something, I sign a contract. I'm always held to it. pretty much everyone's always held to it. The vendor had plenty of time to say, hey, there's a problem here, or they could have come and said, I don't want to sign it because we left something off. They declined to do that. I asked about this item when it came up in July, and I was misled by this district. I was told that this was all an online project. Everything was online. And it turns out that that's not the case. And so I feel disrespected. I feel like I had information misrepresented to me. I would not have voted for this had I known what I know today. So I'm disappointed. I see a constant reoccurring theme in this district of a lack of attention to details. And this is just one more example of a lack of attention to details. I'll be voting no on this. I'll be upholding my fiduciary duty to watch out for taxpayer dollars. And I would recommend our vendors read their contracts in the future.
Thank you, Trustee Westfall. Is there any other comments? Trustee Clayton Tarvin?
Mr. President, I'm confused by the comments of the trustee at the end of the dais about being misled. Again, disrespecting staff, saying things, just haphazardly, talking as if what he says is the gospel truth. I believe Dr. Conroy and Dr. Hansen. So I'd like to hear from Dr. Hansen. Do you know anything about misleading? What is that about? Or President Briscoe, I'd like to hear from Dr. Conroy. And what is the solution? What else can we do? Do we owe this money, right? So it's like, what do we do with debtors? When we're a debtor and we need to pay.
Well, we expected to pay, and it wasn't in the contract. So I thought Dr. Conroy's explanation was great, but Dr. Hansen, if you'd like to explain. And Trustee Westfall has already voted, and we're done commenting, I think. Does anybody else have anything else to say? Is that Trustee Clayton Tarvin, do you want an exposition from Dr. Hansen?
Well, what I guess I'm looking at, and maybe I'll never get it, because it just seems like they're just accusations spewed into the air about being misled and being this and being that. I don't feel I've been misled. I believe that Dr. Conroy and Dr. Hansen are the highest ethical character and give us the best possible service work that we can get. And so I don't think I'm being misled. And again, I just think it's dishonorable, just accusations. It's just wrong.
Thank you. Dr. Hansen, would you confirm that you did not mislead the district?
I confirm, and it clearly says in the board item that it was inadvertently omitted.
Thank you. Trustee Singer?
I recall this came up, and I don't think it came up in July. I want to say it came up in November or December. I remember Trustee Westwell bringing this up, and I want to say it was just November or December when we brought this, and you went back and researched it for us, and you said you would bring it back at a later time. So I don't think this happened in July. I think it just recently happened, if I recall correctly. I'm in the real estate world, and I negotiate contracts all the time, and I can tell you, when a buyer and a seller get together, the excitement, sometimes it happens. Things get missed, and in a working relationship, if an expectation was set for, you go back to the table and say, this was omitted, we need to come back to the table and correct this. And that's what you do. That's what business relationships are. Obviously, if the expectation was that this was to be included, we need to do the right thing and we need to pay them. It's just the right thing to do. Is it unfortunate that it was missed? Yes. But there is human error, and we are working with individuals, and it does happen. I don't think it happens a lot. In fact, since I've been on this board, I haven't seen this type of error myself. So I don't think that it's fair to say that it happens all the time. I think it did happen. We corrected it. It was brought to our attention, and I think that was the right thing to do.
Thank you, Trustee Singer. Trustee Westwell?
Well, the reason my colleague at the other end of the dais is so confused about this conversation is because she wasn't part of it. And so that will help her. This was a conversation that I had between myself and one of the cabinet members before a meeting, and you were not part of it. And so that is why I'm sure you're so confused about everything.
Thank you, Trustee Westwell. Does that conclude our discussion? If it does, I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. I'm going to call for a roll call vote. Trustee Singer?
Aye.
Trustee Clayton Tarvin?
Aye.
Trustee Briscoe, aye. Trustee Souders?
Aye.
Trustee Westwell?
Aye.
Thank you. It passes 5-0. We'll go on to any other public comments. Board of Trustees?
Excuse me, I misspoke. Can you please make that vote a nay, please? I misspoke. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Mr. Parliamentary, Mr. Clerk Souders, could you please rule on that? A do-over? What's the ruling on a do-over?
Do-over, changing a vote. Can you give me a moment?
Changing the contract.
Trustee Clayton Carmen?
Point of order. I believe in our bylaws, it states that when you take a voice vote, if no one says nay or aye, depending on which way, when you take the voice vote, their vote goes with the ayes if it was the ayes in the majority. So I would caution you against taking a roll call vote on every single thing, because what I see here is a little game started here, and I don't like it, because it's taking up our time. So what I suggest you do is you call for it one time. You call for ayes, you call one time for nay, and the secretary shall record the votes as such.
Point of order.
Clerk Souders, could you clarify for us?
In terms of the,
A do-over first, that was the first request.
I'm still working on that. In terms of, I am in concurrence with the trustee to your left, that generally, as far as our board laws are concerned, as far as I remember, a silent vote would be counted with the affirmatives. And I think that just with the prevailing votes, that's correct. And I do not think that we need to go to a roll call vote with each time the trustee decides to.
Thank you for your ruling on that. And then on the matter of the do-over.
Still working on it, just got there. I believe trustee Russell has on it.
Trustee Westwell, do you have a comment?
Yes, I would like the game playing to stop also, Mr. President. I urge you to please stop. Thank you.
It's so nice to have a parliamentarian.
Okay, here we go. In voting by any of these methods, including the counted rising vote, a member has the right to change his vote up to the time the result is announced. After that, he can make the change only by unanimous permission of the assembly.
I've called the decision on the vote, the roll call. I don't even remember now. What did Trustee Westwell vote on the roll call vote?
He did. He voted in the
He
affirmative.
voted aye, that's the problem. So, is there a motion to have a vote by the whole entire body to allow a do-over?
No.
There's no interest in the board to have a do-over. The vote stands 5-0. We're going on to any public, item P, any other public comments to the Board of Trustees? Clerk Souders?
No other comments at this point in time.
Thank you. Item Q, future agenda items as requested by board members. Anybody? No? R, Board of Trustees Roundtable, starting with Trustee Westwell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to remind this board of the I'm concerned about this district and the new direction that we've headed, the spiraling down direction. It's concerning to me. We've got a 4-1 board that just wants to rubber stamp everything that seems to come before it. People aren't paying attention. There's a lack of attention to details in this district. We've got trustees who, in my opinion, is a pathological liar. And court records indicate the same, and members in our communities indicate the same. And I heard tonight pathological lies being spewed again tonight. This trustee wants to air every bit of dirty laundry and misinform the public of what happened. I've informed our board president that I have a condition, an embarrassing condition, that raising my hand could cause embarrassing problems for this board, that my middle finger could come up as a result of me forced raising my hand, and I reminded him that there are other ways to accommodate me, and it's his requirement to accommodate me. I never flipped off anybody like one of the trustees misstated. That didn't occur. Many things that this trustee says doesn't occur. I was also threatened on several occasions by this same trustee. The reason that I'm sitting at this end of the dais was because this particular trustee threatened me. And I want to be as far away from this trustee as possible to avoid any kind of conflict. This trustee welcomes conflict, and in my opinion is hell-bent on causing it. And if that's the way it is, so be it. I've got a great legal defense team that's ready to go. This particular trustee threatened me with a lawsuit, and these lawsuits that she's engaged in before have been wholly a waste of time and a waste of money for her. And she's lost them all. And so, you know, this new direction that we're headed with downward achievement scores and declining enrollments, everyone's fleeing over to the Huntington Beach City School District. You know, this new direction, I'm just not real happy. I'm not going to pat myself on the back like the other trustees. I have no problems bringing these things up. If the other trustees dislike my differing opinion, they should take a look at the board bylaws and read how they're supposed to deal with it. Because we do have differing opinions up here and differences in style.
Thank you, Trustee.
And that's all addressed in the board bylaws. Thank you, Mr. President.
Trustee Clerk Souders.
All right. Well, thank you for making me use this little brown book. I've never had so much use out of this thing in my entire life. You're doing a good job too. It's exciting here. Thank you. It's nice. I bring this stuff everywhere I go. I really appreciate the opportunity to be part of governance. It's taken a new outlook on it, smiling more, having a good time, and I want to thank you guys. It's really the board. It's really an opportunity that I look forward to every 2 weeks to come here and share these evenings with you fine people. There is some excitement here and some heat now and then, and I'm glad we're working through some of our differences. I would like to thank all of the members for coming and for hanging in there. I know these can be sometimes long nights, and you guys pay really good attention. Except for Gingy, I think she's watching reruns of Friends. But for the rest of you, thank you so much. I'm just kidding. I know you pay attention too. And thank you for showing up. Have a good night.
Trustee Singer.
Thank you for hanging in there with us. It definitely has been a colorful meeting for sure. You know, I take high offense when the impression of I'm sitting here rubber stamping things. I take this position extremely serious. I read my agenda before I come to these board meetings. I participate in committees. I visit schools. I talk to parents. I talk to students. I visit our sites. It's more than some of my colleagues do. And I'm not going to sit here and point fingers. That's not what I'm interested in. This is not about, you know, having a political show. This is about running a district and making sure kids are the focus. And I think we consistently, you know, not all of us, of course, but unfortunately, it is constantly forgotten. The focus should be on students. And I don't rubber stamp things. And if that is the impression some of our trustees have, I'm sorry for that. You know, there's been plenty of opportunities for all of us as trustees to get involved in committees, and it's consistently declined. It's consistently, I can't take care of it, I'm not available. So for me, it's like, if you really care, show up, visit those sites, ask the questions, talk to the teachers, get to know the students, figure out what are the needs of those communities that we are serving. How can we serve if we are not involved? Instead of finger pointing all the time, you know, it's just not appreciated. We are here to run the district, and what best way of doing that is to be involved and be part of it without making personal and being kind and polite. You know, I teach my children every day, you might not like what somebody says, be kind and polite. You know, walk away, smile and say thank you and walk away. We don't all have to get along. We don't have to be best friends as soon as we leave this dais. But we do need to be polite to each other, and I see this consistently going back and forth, and it's like, I want to come here and focus on what's important, running this district, not fighting with each other and not having these quarrels. They're not productive. But in fairness, I will always be truthful. The situation that was described by Trustee Clayton Tarvin did happen. It did happen. There were blowing of kisses happening. It did happen. I witnessed it. So I'm not going to advocate one way or another, but I will always stand by the truth. It did happen. So we just need to remind each other to be kind and polite, whether we like each other or not. We are here to do the business of the district, and we need to remember that.
And there's time left, Trustee Singer. Trustee Clayton Tarvin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I had visited Hopeview with my colleague sitting to the left of me. We were there for Authors Day. That was a great event. We actually had two authors there. There was Sherry Fink and there was Mr. Chris Etting. And in fact, we have been able to, bury the hatchet and move forward in a positive manner so that the children of our school district and our employees can continue to flourish. And Mr. Epting agrees. It's a great feat for our community. And we were happy to see him there, and he did a great presentation. I also visited the Republic Transfer Station across the street, actually, at their property at the Wintersburg. I went with Mary Urshima, who's the chair of the Wintersburg Task Force, and with Christine Morris, who is at the Preservation Society, and also with Republic's employees who took us across the street to be able to look at the condition of the historical buildings. They are in great disrepair and falling apart. Luckily, though, Republic has been cooperative in allowing a construction team headed by Michael Grant to be able to do pro bono restoration work to make sure the buildings don't fall down. I'll have a report on that at another time. Went to the Oakview parent meeting last night, and colleague to my left again, she did an amazing presentation. She did it all in Spanish. She is a native Spanish speaker, English learner. Very proud of her because she did great work with our parents in the community last night, informing them about the deceptive nature of the charter school, Sycamore Creek. Good news, I think it's good news anyway. I was appointed by our Congressman, Harley Ruda, to serve as a Democratic Party delegate. He will be announcing that soon, and I will be at the convention in May and then again in November, heading into the general election in 2020. I also attended Ocean View High School night for parents and students. I took my 8th grader there, as well as my colleague to my left was there with her student. Thanks to Ocean View High School for providing that night. And lastly, Happy New Year. It is the Lunar New Year today. It is Tet in Vietnamese, and we're going to be attending a great sort of festival party at Starview on Friday, and I look forward to that. I think Dr. Conroy will be accompanying us there. I think several other trustees will be going as well, and I look forward to seeing the Westminster High School students do their dragon dance and get involved in all of the festivities for the new year. And lastly, I'd just like to say thank you to my colleague again to the left for being honest about what did occur. There is no doubt that that occurred tonight in closed session, and regretfully.
And I will close the trustee comments. I want to draw everybody's attention to other districts coming to Ocean View School District. We have several other districts coming to our district to look at our best practices. This has not been the case for the last many years. Apparently we haven't had enough best practices worth emulating, but we have them now with our various programs, and other districts are coming to look and see what they can take away. And I'm deeply honored, and I want to thank Dr. Hanson and Dr. Conroy and Dr. Hofer, and of course, the world's best personnel negotiator. I think that was for your great work, because it's recognized by people spending half day of their time coming over to watch us. So thank all of you. I do want to confirm that we had kiss blowing in the rudest fashion, and we had a dissertation on some self-confessed disability where if a hand and arm is raised, it causes the middle finger to go up. And so I appreciate the use of the standing and rising as opposed to the raised middle finger and raised arm for recognition on the board, and Trustee Souders' confirmation of the appropriateness of that method of recognition. But we don't need to blow kisses. It really would constitute sexual harassment, and it's just rude. I thought it was rude. Didn't blow any kisses at me, so. Excuse me, I'm speaking, Trustee Westcott, the speaking time is over for everybody else. So, I do want to say I did attend the middle school, and I introduced and kicked off the program, the middle school introduction at Springview. The auditorium was filled with juicy goodness, bursting at the seams with parents coming to learn about our middle school program. We have a lot that we're doing very, very well. I believe we are probably the only school around with a real PE program for middle school. PE is a real class that takes up the same time as English, math, and science, and we give it due diligence and attention in our district. Thank you, Dr. Hanson, Dr. Hofer. That concludes my remarks. We're on to closed session. There is no need for closed session on events. We're on to item T, which is return. We didn't go away. And now we're on to the most important item on the agenda. I will look for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Singer moves and Souders seconds. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Chair calls an aye. Meeting adjourned at 8:50.
Point of order, Mr. President, what was the vote count on that last?
The vote was audible 4, inaudible 1. Chair calls it for a 5-0 approval.